I'm Brandy Cruz, and this is Politics Unpacked. Politics Unpacked is brought to you by our friends at Future 42, making Washington a place where all can prosper. Sign up for their newsletter at future42.org. Let's unpack week 3 of the legislative session. Happening late this week, the 6th and final initiative from the group Let's Go Washington has officially been certified by the Secretary of State's office. That means the legislature must now consider all of the initiatives, but if they fail to act, the initiatives will go to voters in November. The initiatives have been a key theme during the first 3 weeks of the session, with Republicans urging each of them to be given a committee hearing and Democrats so far declining. Meanwhile, proponents of all 6 initiatives said in a press release that they will be rallying outside the state capitol on Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. to encourage lawmakers to schedule them for hearings. Renewed attention this week on fixing a bill passed during the 2021 legislative session. The so-called Keeping Families Together Act made it more difficult to remove children from homes where there is active substance abuse. After the death of a 3-week-old baby this week who the Department of Children, Youth and Families put in the custody of his father despite active drug use, State Representative Travis Couture, a Republican from Allen, said he hopes to get traction on his bill, House Bill 2233, which would make drug use itself constitute imminent harm toward a child.
It also says more than just fentanyl. It's shooting for meth. It's shooting for black tar heroin, because as we look at the fatality reports, we can clearly see that fentanyl is like 70% of the problem here. These numbers aren't even capturing all the drug-related deaths. Like, for instance, when mom does a drug, but then rolls over on the bed and on top of the baby and suffocates the baby. That's not accidental ingestion or overdose. That's something else, but it's still a drug-related death. But if you're on heroin, if you're on meth, you don't have the capacity to parent for your kids. And so mine really is focusing on those Schedule 1 and 2 drugs, right? So not just fentanyl, but the hard drugs. The hard drugs, I think society mostly agrees you can't really parent your kids while you're on those.
Meanwhile, Democrats are sponsoring their own fix. House Bill 2447 would focus specifically on the dangers of synthetic opioids rather than all illegal drugs, and would give judges more leeway in deciding whether fentanyl use warrants removing a child from the home. Now for a few bills to watch. Senate Bill 5209 would make voting mandatory, well, sort of. Sponsored by Democratic State Senator Sam Hunt, it would require voters turn their ballot in even if it's blank, except there wouldn't be a punishment attached to the law if you failed to do so. There was a hearing this week for House Bill 2114, which strengthens tenant protections. The bill caps rent increases at 5% a year and also limits late fees and move-in fees. The bill's sponsor says it's necessary to keep people in their homes.
People are struggling to pay the rent. Seniors on fixed incomes are making the impossible decision whether to pay rising rent or other necessary items. I hear from families who keep paying more and more rent, and they can't save money to buy a home. Hardworking people who work in childcare and healthcare and grocery stores, who pay their rent on time each month and then see their rent go up faster than their wages, and they can't keep up, and they have to move farther and farther from their jobs.
Meanwhile, opponents of the bill, including some landlords, say it will only make the state's housing crisis worse and unfairly targets them in the process.
My name is Bruce Becker. I'm a small landlord in Seattle, and I urge you to reject HB 2114. It does not do what is necessary, which is to create a business environment that makes being a housing provider simple, efficient, and as dependable and predictable as possible. This is the kind of business environment that's needed to increase housing, which is the goal. And limiting rents has a lot of side effects. It includes the lack of building and the lack of collection of sales tax on those buildings. And it ultimately leads to less investment and maintenance in housing, which decreases the value of the properties. And as a result, you won't be able to collect the taxes that you would otherwise collect. The rent control does not follow the costs. costs go up sometimes substantially. And in fact, in light of the fact that the last few years we were restricted from rent increases, even though taxes increased substantially, that creates a real problem to limit it to 5%.
There is another effort this year to create a Washington State Commission on Boys and Men. House Bill 1270 would set up a commission to tackle the unique challenges boys and men face in the areas of mental health and suicide, education, and criminal justice. For more on week 3 of the legislative session, let's check in with Brett Davis at the Center Square. Brett Davis, thanks for being back with us.
Well, thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, thanks for monitoring some of this stuff so the rest of us don't have to pay attention to every little thing that's going on.
I should get hazard pay.
You should get hazard pay. I agree with you on that. There were a couple interesting bills this week. One of them that has become a little bit controversial. Democrats seem to be fast-tracking a bill that would require certain disclosures when alternatives to initiatives to the legislature are proposed.
Right. So that'd be House Bill 2459. Basically, it would change the current oversight of the financial impact statement on initiatives to being controlled by the Attorney General's office, which probably raising some red flags with folks. Proponents describe it as a transparency bill, but opponents describe it as a response to Let's Go Washington 6 initiatives. They're saying that's a response to that. So
it seems like one of those bills that probably wouldn't get a lot of attention if we weren't in the midst of this huge 6 initiatives and the controversy around those.
Right. I mean, the timing just lends itself to that. So
yeah, timing is always something, and that really could be what the timing is about anyway. Okay, this also has been a controversial bill. We've talked about it on our show before. The State House has just passed a PSE natural gas ban, and again, timing is everything. It comes after we had a big cold snap where people were without power.
Right. So you have to wonder about the timing of some of these bills, just in terms of PR. But anyway, House Bill 1589, which passed the House on Tuesday, it would basically ban any gas company serving more than 500,000 customers. That's just a fancy way of, making the bill apply to Puget Sound Energy from connecting new natural gas lines to new residential or commercial buildings. Now, there are some exceptions, certain manufacturers, medical care centers, correctional facilities, military facilities, but I think we can see where they're going with this.
Yeah, and so for at least for now, if you're a Puget Sound Energy customer, which I am, and I imagine a lot of people watching are, and you're being served natural gas by PSE currently, there would no immediate change for you.
PSE, they would no longer be required to provide natural gas services to existing customers, which state law currently mandates. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and at what point in the future that change might come from PSE. Okay, Governor Inslee has been knocked for missing a few climate-related goals that he set for himself and for the state. One of them has to do with recycling. Actually, over the years, recycling has gone down in the state of Washington, not up. So there is a bill that aims to rectify that.
Right. Actually, there's 2 bills that do basically the same thing with one major difference, House Bill 2049 and House Bill 1900. They both actually have a truth in labeling, provision, which basically means you have to show that they're mostly recycled, largely recycled in Washington State. And they also call for increasing the amount of recycled content used in creating new packaging. The big difference between the 2 bills is House Bill 2049 as opposed to House Bill 1900 is that it would change who pays for curbside recycling, what the bill refers to as, quote, extended provider responsibility programs, end quote. It's basically a fancy way of saying the companies will have to pay for it as opposed to residents. The people with House Bill 1900, they don't think that's a good idea. They think that's going to, cause some problems. So they would kind of want to keep it the way it is now, but maybe improve recycling, which, as I understand it, has gone to a little bit below 50%, according to a recent study. So apparently we're number 15 in the nation in terms of recycling. So we're doing well, but that just under 50% number has been stagnant for the last couple of years. So
yeah, probably not where the climate governor wants that to be. So
probably not.
We'll watch those bills. Brett Davis, we'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for having me.
That has been week 3 of Politics Unpacked. I'm Brandy Cruz. Have a great weekend. Politics Unpacked is brought to you by our friends at Future 42, making Washington a place where all can prosper. Sign up for their newsletter at future42.org. To support Undivided and our content like this, you can subscribe for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com.